Let's watch a collection of horrible fates, industrial edition. We started this last time, but my internet pooped the bed. But we're going to start from the beginning because I think we got like 2 minutes into this video before Spectrum shit the bed. So
things more gruesome and disturbing than
no AI generated content used. Okay, for those who were here last time, I was complaining that this is blatantly scary, interesting using AI voice. It's blatant, by the way. I want to clarify, it is absolutely blatant that he just used the AI version of his voice. But the audacity to put no AI generated content used at the beginning when it's absolutely obvious that you're using an AI voice is just, come on, bro.
Our soft, squishy bodies are just so out of place amongst the heavy machinery and fast-moving parts. So in this video, we're going to look at 5 people who had the incredible misfortune of being on the wrong side of the thin margin of safety. And although the events in this video are fleeting and non-descriptive, they are still highly disturbing, so viewer discretion is strongly advised.
I'll just say this, if it just so happens that he actually recorded this and is using his real voice, you need a new microphone or you need something, because I don't know what happened to where your voice got bit crushed and had like the metallic things that come with AI voices. But you need a new mic if you're actually recording it, because
the turn of the 20th century was a time of technological and industrial expansion in the United States. This led to a boom in jobs and better employment for workers of all means. But as great as this was for the average family, labor laws and safety standards were non-existent. Factories were notorious for horrendous working conditions, as leaders of industry were under no obligation to ensure the work was safe. The average factory worker at the time also included children, some of whom worked 18 hours a day and lived at the factories.
Classic.
As you might imagine, overworked workers made mistakes, and mistakes in an environment full of moving parts, noxious fumes, and harmful substances were often costly. In the year 1900 alone, 35,000 American workers were killed in industrial accidents, and another 500,000 were maimed by injuries that ranged from lost limbs to severe burns.
Yeah, chat, let's go
in
back
the early
to those
1900s
days.
In New York City, the Brooklyn Cedarware Company ran a factory filled with the latest equipment to manufacture wooden plates, utensils, furniture, and more from start to finish. The process of making cedar into functional items involved a lot of steps that were now handled by all the new machines and large equipment that packed the factory floor. And in his days as an engineer, William Wilsley was the type of skilled professional responsible for inventing and improving machines like those. At 63 years old though, William's engineering days were behind him. He earned it too. As a Civil War veteran, William was an engineer on U.S. naval ships before spending decades working in factories just like the Brooklyn Cedarware Company. Then, looking for a change of pace in his later years, William took a job at the factory as a watchman. By the morning of New Year's Eve in 1905, William had been in his new role for about 2 months and very much enjoyed the less strenuous work. As a watchman,
is it like a manager, like an overseer?
Had to make frequent rounds on the property to ensure no one unauthorized was in the building and that all the machines were as they should be. It wasn't uncommon for these new inventions to spring a leak or suddenly catch fire, so William was the first line of defense against those kind of disasters.
Oh, okay.
One of his regular tasks was to go around and close the valves on the many large vats that held water used in the cedarware making process. It sounds simple enough, but the valves actually weren't outside the vats, they were inside.
The genius marvels of technology, chat. Hey, we need to turn off this boiling hot vat of water, okay? But you're gonna have to go inside that boiling water to turn it off. Just genius mechanical engineering right here, ladies and
couldn't
gentlemen.
be accessed by reaching down into the vat either. Closing them required someone to climb a few rungs down a ladder that ran to the bottom of the vat. Closing them also required doing so with hundreds of gallons of water just a few feet below. The engineering side of William found that placement of the valves to be absurd and unnecessarily dangerous, but he wasn't the type to ignore the requirements of his job. With his shift almost over, William was on his final rounds that morning and was looking forward to going home and enjoying the holiday with his family. As he walked the factory floor, William would climb to the top of each water vat when he came upon one, step down the ladder on the inside, and turn the valve handle to the closed position. Once done, he'd move as fast as he could up the ladder, but on a bitter New York winter morning like that, he had to admit the warm steam felt pretty good.
No.
At one of the last vats, William transitioned from the ladder outside the vat to the platform, turned himself around, and grabbed a ladder leading inside the vat. But the moment his weight hit the top rung, it snapped.
Oh, God. Oh, God, bro. He's gonna get boiled alive. Oh, Jesus Christ.
The Brooklyn Cedarware Company was just like other factories of the time period in the way it viewed worker safety, which was by ignoring it. There were no routine safety checks done on anything, whether it was complex technology or a simple ladder.
Dude, people who lived through the 1900s and survived, like, I'm talking the early 1900s, and obviously before that too. But like, damn, bro, like, everything killed people. Like, literally the smallest thing. No security checks, nothing. They're just like, fuck it, bro, we ball. That's how they lived back then. Oh, what, safety? What are you, pussy?
A ladder subject to the steam of boiling water over a long enough time weakens to the point of breaking. And yes, the vats were all filled with boiling water all day, every day. Before he even knew what was happening, William plunged headfirst into the scalding water below. After fighting to get back to the surface, William's shrieks filled the factory. The only other person in the entire building at the time was a machinist named Albert Newton.
Oh, Lord.
When he heard William, he ran toward him, and when he reached him, Albert could hardly believe what he was seeing when he got to the platform of the vat William was in. As he was trying to make his way back to the ladder, William was in hysterics and flailed in an attempt to keep from sinking. When water boils, bubbles rise to the surface. The higher the temperature of the water...
Fuck, no. Runner, I swear to God. Stop. Stop it right now.
The more intensely bubbles shoot to the top of the water. Get it high enough and water reaches what's called a rolling boil. When that happens, the size and speed of the rising bubbles make the water look like it's literally rolling. And it may look like air escaping from the water, but it's actually water vapor.
Oh, God.
Because this gas is less dense than water, it rises and becomes steam when it breaks the surface. When water boils...
At least he didn't feel it for long. Bro, he's boiling. Yeah, he probably felt it for a good while, chat. He probably felt he's getting cooked. Chat, he's cooked. Unironically cooked.
Anything in it that's more dense than gas will sink, so William had to fight that much harder just to stay above the water. When the initial shock of what he was seeing passed, Albert looked around and grabbed a long paddle used to stir the water on the platform edge. Holding the handle, he then lowered the paddle end for William to grab onto and pulled him to the edge. William then grabbed onto Albert, and Albert pulled him out of the vat, and coming in contact with William's bright red skin was enough to cause a burn on Albert's arm. In the panic though, Albert didn't even notice as he rushed down the ladder to get help while William writhed and continued screaming on the platform. William was then rushed to a nearby hospital with 100% of his body covered in severe burns. Shortly after arriving, William died. Tragically, his horrific end did nothing to change labor and safety practices in the factory or anywhere else.
Dude, they didn't give a shit. They just said, oh yeah, he died from that. Oh well, fuck it. I mean, you know, it wasn't our fault. It wasn't because we didn't do any safety checks. Nah, it's negligence. He was just negligent. That's what it was.
It wouldn't be until 65 years later when the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, would be formed to enact workplace safety standards as a direct result of industrial and factory accidents that became commonplace at the turn of the century, like the one that ended William's life.
Chat, like, I know, you know, our current climate in the world ain't great, but it's better than that. I'll tell you that much.
In the mid-1800s, when cities began building...
Gotta look on the bright side. You know, at least you're not boiling in a vat right now.
Tall iron frame buildings, architects ran into a problem. This problem was the fact that stairs make lousy selling points above the 4th floor. So the solution to this problem was the elevator. Early versions were little more than glorified freight hoists, which were platforms that yo-yoed up and down with the help of steam or water power. The real game changer, though, came in 1853 when a mechanic named Elijah Otis climbed onto a platform high above the crowd at New York's Crystal Palace exhibition. He then ordered the supporting rope to be cut and plummeted, but thanks to his newly invented safety brake, came to a safe and comfortable stop. All of a sudden, vertical travel seemed less like a coin toss, and by the late 1850s, department stores in Manhattan were advertising their passenger elevators as fun attractions. Now, most of these early passenger lifts were hydraulic. Picture an enormous piston in a shaft of water or oil pushing the cab skyward. There was another problem with this, though. The higher the building, the deeper the piston had to sink when the car came down. Digging a 150-foot well under a 12-story structure wasn't just expensive, it was unrealistic. Engineers would need something lighter, faster, and ideally something that didn't require turning the basement into a mine shaft. That something would end up being the cable and pulley system, which was met by another advancement, something known as the traction motor. This is also where the counterweight was introduced into elevator technology. These new cable-driven elevators didn't just eliminate the need for underground pistons, they made high-rise buildings truly practical. It was the addition of counterweights that turned elevators into efficient, scalable machines.
All right,
here's the basic principle. Without a counterweight, an elevator
someone's either going to die to the counterweight or they're going to plummet to their death.
Motor has to lift the full weight of the cab and everyone inside it. If you add a counterweight that's calibrated to roughly equal the weight of the empty cab plus 40 to 50% of its maximum passenger load, however, the system suddenly balances out. With that, the motor's job is more like giving a push to a child on a swing and not hoisting an anvil with every cycle. These counterweights were typically composed of stacked cast iron or steel blocks and were designed to move in the opposite direction of the cab. When the elevator went up, the counterweight came down and vice versa. The two were then linked by a series of heavy-duty cables running over a big pulley wheel mounted above the elevator shaft. As a result of this, the whole system operates with far less strain, extending the life of cables and motors while using significantly less energy. And when functioning properly, they're invisible, silent parts of the elevator's hidden anatomy, never noticed unless you're the one to service them. On the morning of February 13th, 1907, the California Warehouse Company's building on 2nd Street in San Francisco was just beginning to stir. But in the belly of the building, tucked beneath the elevator shaft, Ernest, a 32-year-old electrical worker, was already hard at work. Ernest's career had taken him along the railways of the East Coast.
Dude's name is Ernest. Dude, what happened to the name Ernest? I feel like that's such like an old, like early 90s name. Fucking Ernest. You don't hear anybody named Ernest anymore.
Boston and Northern Railroad, but at some point he pivoted to the electrical trade. This was a field that was exploding with opportunity in the early 1900s as cities lit up and machinery replaced manpower.
Such an old man name.
He then moved to California to chase what so many were at the time: opportunity, adventure, and maybe a fresh start. He then found work with the Decker Electrical Company, a promising position that put him on the front lines of a rapidly modernizing world. But with that opportunity came risk. Electrical work in 1907 was no joke, and paired with elevator repair in a bustling warehouse, it was a volatile mix of moving parts and narrow margins. Solid one. That February morning, he descended into the elevator pit, likely to inspect or repair a component of the lift system. The job would have been familiar enough to a man of his experience, but time was money, especially for someone new to the West Coast and eager to prove himself. Down in that dark space, Ernest hurriedly got to work on whatever his task was for the morning. Somewhere above, the elevator began to rise. It's not clear if it was a routine function test, miscommunication.
Oh no, bro. Okay, this is I don't know what I was thinking was gonna happen, but it wasn't this. It wasn't this.
Or simple oversight, but the cab was.
Oh no! Dude. Actually, I called it. Didn't I say that earlier? Someone's gonna get crushed by the counterweight. Never mind. I thought it was gonna be crushed by the elevator. Never mind.
Operated by J.G. Huffy, Ernest's assistant. J.G. might have thought the cab needed to be repositioned, or perhaps he didn't realize his colleague had descended into the pit. Either way, the machinery obeyed the button's command without hesitation. As the elevator car climbed, the massive counterweight came barreling down in the adjacent shaft. Ernest never had a chance to react. The counterweight struck with tremendous force, completely moving through any resistance between it and the stopping point, which included Ernest's head.
Oh God.
He was gone instantly, likely without ever knowing he was in any kind of trouble.
Okay, at least there's a silver lining. At least he just like gone, like poof, dead, you know, didn't even know what happened. At least there's that. At least it's not getting boiled alive. Like, getting boiled alive is pretty fucking rough. But this, I mean, that's not bad.
G, meanwhile, upon realizing what had happened, was so overcome with shock and horror that witnesses said he was barely able to speak. The warehouse's hustle then stopped cold, and Ernest's mangled form was pulled from the pit a short time later, crushed by the very system designed to make vertical travel safer and more efficient.
I can't imagine.
But the tragedy wasn't just the result of faulty design. It was the razor-thin margin for error that workers like Ernest faced every day. The counterweight simply did what it was built to do, move in perfect opposition to the cab, but when a human ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time, there was no forgiveness in the system's precision.
Oh boy.
It was right around 10:40 on a Tuesday night in May of 2018.
Have you seen that video of the blood running down the elevator doors from the mechanic? Absolutely horrific. Yeah, I've seen that one.
An on-call came into the Chicago area 911 dispatchers. Emergency personnel
Is it? Wait, hold up. Is it this one?
in and around such a large area have pretty much seen, heard, and experienced it all, but the call that came in that night would leave even the most veteran among them trying to remember a situation even remotely comparable. Police were then directed to an industrial laundry facility in Niles,
Oh, okay, never mind. Laundry. All right. I was about to say, we're about to see another elevator incident?
Illinois, just outside of Chicago. When they arrived shortly after, they were led by frantic employees to the back of the building where a worker had found something no one ever expected to see. There, wedged between a massive commercial dryer and a conveyor belt used to shuttle wet linens across the facility, was a 42-year-old employee. Emergency personnel got right to assessing the situation and working to free the man from his horrific situation, all the while remaining hopeful that they had arrived in time to save his life. Once they had gotten his body unstuck, however, it became clear that he was gone. The employee was pronounced dead at the scene around 11 p.m.
How?
Police then took over and began investigating his death to determine if it was the result of anything criminal. The first real clue then came from a security camera. Around 9:56 p.m., just a few minutes after the man was last seen by his coworkers, the surveillance footage showed him standing near one of the large dryers, facing the conveyor belt. Something seems to have caught his attention, like a towel partially hanging from the dryer's edge, right where the belt carried heavy wet linens from local hotels from one machine to the next. The footage then shows the man reach for it before moving out of frame, and that's when the conveyor belt moved. The belt violently lurched upward for a moment, just enough to throw things off balance before coming to an abrupt and complete stop. Everything was completely still after that. From that point on, the man didn't appear on the video. He was eventually discovered about half an hour later by a coworker.
Dude, that's fucking crazy. He just... Nobody heard any screams, nothing. Just poof, dead.
Wondering why the washers and dryers weren't running. From this video, police believe that when he tried to dislodge the towel, the machine inadvertently activated, although it's unclear what exactly could have caused that. But either way, it pulled him into a gap barely wide enough for a load of bed sheets, let alone a full-grown human. The conveyor system itself is also massive at about 3 feet or 1 meter across and towering as high as 7 feet or 2 meters off the ground in some places. It was a quick and efficient system for getting wet laundry and heavy compressed mounts from the washer to the dryer, but it was also a brutal piece of equipment if you ended up on the wrong side of it, like the man did. The autopsy then confirmed what first responders already suspected. The man died from head injuries. It was blunt force, likely happening within seconds of him being trapped. Likewise, no foul play was suspected, and there were no signs of sabotage or intentional harm.
Thank
It
you.
was,
Thank you, Sloggy, for the gifted subs.
by all accounts, a tragic accident.
Oh, God. These are rough.
By the dawn of the 20th century, the telephone had gone from
This guy's laughing and rich right now.
an interesting invention to complete infatuation. What had once just been an experiment was now rapidly becoming an everyday utility, stringing cities, towns, and rural homes into a nationwide web of instant communication. And to put this in perspective, in 1877 and 1878, the first telephone line was constructed, the first switchboard installed, and the first telephone exchange opened for business. By just 1880, nearly 50,000 phones were in use, and that number grew tenfold by the turn of the century, and within a decade, it would hit nearly 6 million.
God damn.
Obviously, though, these early telephone systems were rudimentary by modern standards. Wires were often strung along poles with minimal insulation, and grounding was hit or miss at best. In some rural areas, phone lines were tacked up alongside or even on the same poles as high-voltage power lines.
Oh, goody.
The infrastructure was just growing too quickly for careful planning and too cheaply for robust safeguards. Surge protectors weren't a thing yet, and regulatory oversight was spotty at best. More than anything, though, people just sort of trusted the technology before they fully understood the dangers. On Wednesday, January 30th, 1901, in Smartsville, California, for James Doyle Jr., the day began like any other. James was a 27-year-old lineman for the Bay County's power company, and for the past few months he'd been stationed in Smartsville, keeping an eye on the company's lines that ran between the Yuba and Bear Rivers. It was steady work, good work, and he'd earned a reputation as capable, reliable, and sharp with his hands. To make his job easier, the company had installed a telephone at the Doyle home. This allowed James to communicate directly with men working up and down the power line without needing to leave the house.
Okay.
Around 11 o'clock that morning, James stepped toward the telephone. He may have heard the ring himself, or he may have simply intended
Bro, is he about to fucking die from electrocution from grabbing a telephone?
to make a routine call. Whatever the reason, he picked up the receiver and placed it to his ear. James's mother, standing nearby, would later recall hearing a sharp and sudden snap as if
Bro, what?
something outside had broken. He didn't cry out or recoil, he just dropped to the ground right there at his mother's feet. His mother then screamed, and in a panic, she rushed to her son and grabbed him. That's when she felt a searing, invisible force surging through his body into hers.
Oh
Her
my
hands were then
God.
badly burned in just a split second. The electrical current still present in that moment nearly claimed her
How
too,
much-
somehow she tore herself
How
away.
many volts?
James, however,
how many
didn't
watts?
move. According to testimony given later, James's father heard him
What other measurement of electricity? There's
speak
only
after his fall. His
there's only
voice
volts, right? Watts is fucking bulbs, right?
was apparently faint as he said, quote, "Mama, do not be scared or worried. I'm all right."
Oh,
As soon as the words escaped his mouth, James drew his last
Oh.
and final breath. A coroner arrived shortly after and would then
Oh,
ask
so
questions,
sad.
take testimony, and uncover the chain of events that led to a healthy 27-year-old man to die in his own home from an act of the unknown.
Jules, true. There's Jules.
The first account came from James's mother, who was still bandaged from the burns on her hands. She told the coroner exactly what she saw. James walked to the phone, picked it up, and then she heard that snap like a branch cracking or a rope breaking. Then, within seconds, her son lay dead at her feet. Then, during James's father's testimony, he relayed the heartbreaking final words of his son to the inquest jury.
That's so sad.
As the coroner worked to piece the incident together, a plausible theory began to take shape, although it did little to comfort anyone. Investigators believed that a high-voltage power line somewhere along the Bay County's route had become loose or broken. When it fell, even for just a moment, it made contact with a nearby telephone wire, perhaps the very wire connected to the Doyle residence. That instant contact, however brief, was all it
Wow.
took. Thousands of volts coursed into a line never meant to carry them. And in the days after the incident, it was learned that it wasn't just Smartsville that was affected. In Marysville, 25 miles away, multiple telephone users reported feeling sudden shocks while on the line around the same time. Thankfully, no one else was injured, but several people said it felt like the phone jumped in their hands or sparked in their ears. Unfortunately for James, standing at the wrong place at the worst possible moment had caught the brunt of it. There were no criminal charges or lawsuits filed. James's death was really a tragic, deeply unusual accident.
That's rough, man. Holy shit.
The morning of June 21st, 2011, in California's Kern.
I lived in my hometown has oil fields literally everywhere, and there was the school I went to had a nickname. I won't say it because then you'll know. It has the word smell in it. It had a nickname, the word smell in it, because it smelled like fucking farts, like 24/7 at that school. It just smelled like fucking farts because we were surrounded by oil fields. Whenever I was doing cross country, you know, and I just had to run around, you know, the area of the school, just breathing in sulfur and fart smell. Just, oh man. I think that's why I love the smell of farts now. I don't know.
County oil fields was dry, dusty, and humming with the groan of heavy equipment. Just west of the town of Taft, 3 Chevron workers were walking across the sprawling Midway Sunset Field, which is the largest and most productive oil reserve in the state. Among them was Dave, a 54-year-old supervisor with more than 30 years of experience under his belt. David spent decades working among the pump jacks and steaming vents of Kern County. He was also as respected as he was experienced, and the kind of man who showed up early, stayed late, and kept operations running smoothly. That morning, Dave and his crew had been asked to check out a familiar trouble spot, which was a dormant well known for shooting scalding geysers of oil, steam, and rock up to 40 feet in the air. Because of this, workers called it the chimney. As they walked toward the site, something gave Dave pause. The discolored and disturbed soil ahead of him just looked wrong to his eye. And in fact, a second later, a plume of steam curled up from the ground. Dave then cautiously moved closer to get a better look around and to evaluate the risks and to get the job done. A moment later, however, the ground opened up. With a suddenness that left absolutely no time to react, the earth beneath Dave gave way, revealing a roiling pit of hot oil, water, and debris.
Oh, shit!
His co-workers didn't even get a chance to lunge for him before Dave's primal screams echoed from the hole below. One of them then rushed forward, reaching a hand out to Dave, while another grabbed a length of pipe, hoping it would be long enough for him to grab onto. Dave's hands were briefly visible as he grasped for it, but the pipe was too short. And soon, the air filled with the sound of boiling as the sickening stench of heated crude oil and water got stronger. Then, in a matter of seconds, Dave vanished into the muck, sinking into what can only be described as a man-made hell.
Holy shit. So we got 2 people getting boiled alive? Oh my god, it really, in this video we got 2 fucking people boiling alive. Holy.
Oh. The site was sealed off afterward in a matter of hours, but it didn't feel like a crime scene. It felt more like a wound in the earth had swallowed one of Chevron's most trusted and reliable workers. Investigators arrived sometime later, carefully stepping around the edges of the collapsed earth where the steam continued to hiss from the opening. Despite their arrival though, Dave's body wouldn't be recovered from the sinkhole for 17 hours after the boiling fluids had cooled enough for a recovery team to reach the spot where he'd vanished. Chevron was tight-lipped in the immediate aftermath, but the shock inside the company was real. Dave wasn't just some rookie who ignored protocol, he was the guy others looked to when things went sideways. His co-workers, already in shock from the horror of what they'd witnessed, were now left to reckon with the company's response, or lack thereof.
Classic.
Chevron issued a brief statement.
Oh, what? What, a worker that we put out in extremely dangerous situations that we underpay and overwork died a horrible, disgusting death, probably one of the worst deaths you could possibly have? That sucks. Anyway, fucking trash-ass companies, man.
Expressing condolences, but it was as if the reality of what had happened hadn't fully hit yet. State regulators then jumped into action as Dave's death ignited a firestorm of questions about safety protocol and the risks of a drilling technique known as steam injection. Chevron was actually a pioneer of this process, and it took place at wells that had already been mostly pumped dry.
Oh, we don't give a shit, bro. We're making money. I'm making more money now. I don't give a shit.
With all the liquid oil extracted, a thick tar remained inside wells, so the company turned to steam injection. Basically, a pump would send steam down into the wells to melt and thin out the crude that stuck to the chamber walls, making it easier to pump out every last drop of oil. At first, it seemed like nothing would change, but then a series of eruptions caused even more scrutiny, and steam injection near the site was halted and over 100 wells were shut down. Simultaneously, California OSHA initially ruled Dave's death as an act of God, essentially absolving Chevron. A second investigation then found the site still unusable and flagged Chevron for failing to properly warn workers. Chevron was then fined at just $350 and oil production ramped back up.
What? I'm sorry, $350 for a probably billion-dollar company? I'm sorry? What? What? Dude, that's the cost of groceries for a week. $350 is groceries for a week.
13 years later, a court awarded Dave's family $120 million.
There we go. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. That's better.
Recognizing the company's responsibility. But the ruling didn't fix the land, didn't change the method, and didn't bring Dave back. Today, steam still rises from the area.
Took 13 years, yep. Act of God, am I right?